Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. In this one, we're not going to be getting into any kind of intros or stuff like that because, as you can see, the elephant in the room here says on the top banner, a moderate risk of severe thunderstorms is forecast today and or tonight. And then it gives a little bit of a summary. An outbreak of severe thunderstorms is expected today with the primary threat centered over Illinois and Indiana. Several intense tornadoes, swaths of damaging wind gusts over 75 miles per hour, and damaging wind-driven hail will all be possible today and into tonight. So, yeah, as you can see, we currently on the home page have a composite radar with watches issued. The blue polygons are severe thunderstorm watches, and the red polygons are tornado watches. A tornado watch has just been issued for central Illinois and extreme portions of northeastern Missouri. So that's cool. Um, there is expected to be a mesoscale convective system that's going to be going through the area, and then the cold front is going to kind of like do its thing, do some stuff, and all that jazz. I don't know why people have been hyping things up. I mean, I can kind of see why. Like the moderate risks and all these photographs and soundings that people have pulled from the models. It's crazy, and I completely understand. But they're just stupid. But anyways, um, so hold on, there's another mesoscale discussion, so or at least I think so. Just no. Oh, they corrected it. They corrected it. Yeah, sorry. I thought they issued a new one, but they actually corrected it. I don't know. They've been correcting these mesoscale discussions lately. They haven't had to do these. They haven't had to correct them in a while, and I just they correct them. But yeah, anyways, it doesn't really matter. So right now we have a moderate risk of severe weather. The moderate risk is in red, as you can see on the bottom of the screen. The enhanced risk is in orange. The slight risk is in yellow, and the marginal risk is in green. Now there are two marginal risks because this one right here is from the Texas Gulf Coast into the Louisiana and the Louisianan Gulf Coast and the Mississippian Gulf Coast and southern Mississippi. That's actually from potential tropical cyclone 1. So there's a potential tropical cyclone that is actually moving through and may become a tropical storm, maybe become Tropical Storm Arthur, uh, unsure. So yeah, that's yeah. But yeah, the moderate risk is in red, the enhanced risk is in yellow, or sorry, the enhanced risk is in orange, the slight risk is in yellow, and the moderate or marginal risk is in green, dark green, excuse me. We have a very high tornado probability. We have a 15% Sig 2 or conditional intensity group 2 of tornadoes. So that basically means that in, in a point, 25 miles of a given point in that red region, um, there, especially in that steak-looking region, like you know how a steak looks like when it's just off the grill, it has those lines, those solid lines. Well, it's kind of what a steak looks like, especially in that steak-like appearance. If you have a point and then 25 miles of that given point, there's a 15% chance or a 10% chance, depending on what color you live in, 15% or 10% chance that there is an EF3 plus tornado that will come from a supercell. Now, now, yeah, so. Yeah. So EF3 plus tornadoes are very possible in that steak-looking region, especially in the 15% where the most concentrated threat is. And then you also have a hatched risk, like a regular SIG 1. It looks like dashed lines. Those are the hatched risks. Just SIG 1, just SIG 1, conditional intensity group 1. And so that just means that EF2 plus tornadoes are possible or expected today. And obviously, there's a difference between frequency versus intensity. Frequency and intensity don't necessarily have to correlate. You can have a 30% sig 1 risk of tornadoes, or you could theoretically have a 10% sig 3 of tornadoes. I mean, I don't even know if that's possible. Uh, I don't even know if that's possible, but it is maybe or something. I don't know. But yeah. Anyways, so uh, yeah. Um, that's that. So yeah, I just checked. You can technically have a 10% sig 3 risk of tornadoes, which is nice. Well, not nice, but you know what I mean. So if you live in the yellow, if you live in any of these colors, you're screwed. Essentially, closer you are to the red area, the more screwed you are, and the closer you are to the yellow and orange, the yellow and brown areas, still kind of screwed. If you're in the green areas, I don't really think there's a huge problem. I mean, obviously, tornado warnings are likely to appear in the 2%. So if that does occur and you do live in the 2%, uh, the green, then you know. Obviously, if you're under a tornado warning, you need to get to shelter immediately. So is the utmost priority. But yeah, just again to recap, if you live in that stake-like area, 15% or parts of the 10%, there's a chance of an EF3 plus tornado going through that location. Uh, if you live in the single hash area or the dashed lines, then there's a chance of an EF2 plus tornado. EF2s and EF3s, they're both still very dangerous, very killer, very deadly tornadoes. But we could have an EF4 or theoretically an EF5 today. So yeah, that's the scary fact is that there's potential for an EF5. It's really all how the thunderstorms play out. Sometimes the convective allowing models don't really give all that much detail and all that stuff. So, but yeah, anyways, that's the tornado threat. Here's the wind threat. I'm just gonna refresh because it's not updating. It's supposed to update, yo. But yeah, while this is updating, okay, never mind. So there's a 45% risk of wind also that was not added at the 6Z update. 6Z is 1 a.m. Central or 2 a.m. Eastern. There's a 45% single hatch risk of wind damage from central Illinois through central Indiana and even into parts of extreme western Ohio. There's a 45% risk of wind damage. So we could take a look at both the Lincoln and Chicago area forecast discussions, or maybe just the Lincoln because it's square in the center. So, but we could look at both and just say for both. So yeah, let's just do both because it, it, it it's just easier. But anyway, like I was saying, there's a 45% risk of hatched risk of wind from central Illinois through central Indiana into west central, extreme west central Ohio, and then that's the pink area. The 30% risk area is the red, and it goes from western Missouri all the way into southeast Iowa, most of Illinois, most of Indiana, and most and all of western Ohio, and even is on the state line from Indiana and Ohio and Michigan, that triad. And the 15% goes from Kansas and Oklahoma to Missouri to Iowa to Wisconsin to Michigan to most of Ohio, northern Kentucky, uh, basically the rest of Indiana, most of Illinois, and then all that good stuff. And then the 5% is, well, the brown area, and there's also a 5% down here. And then going over the hail threat remains relatively similar. There is a risk of large giant hail. Um, from Missouri to Illinois to Indiana, there's a 30% single hatched risk of hail, and then there's a 15% hatched risk of hail extending from Kansas to Missouri to Iowa to southern Minnesota to Wisconsin to southern Michigan and northwest Ohio, most of Indiana, most of Illinois, and all that good stuff. And then that 5% is just in the Brown area. So, but the main threat here is the tornadoes, the secondary threat is the wind, and the tertiary threat is the hail. The wind obviously can cause some significant damage on its own because gusts of 85 to 100 miles per hour are obviously no joke. But EF3 plus tornadoes, theoretically having EF5s on your hands, on our hands, excuse me, it could be it's a very dangerous situation. So this is definitely an emergency situation. So we need to get all the resources that we can, and so that's why I'm pulling up both the Chicago and Lincoln area forecast discussions. But anyways, so here we have it. There's a moderate risk of severe thunderstorms across Illinois and Indiana. Summary: an outbreak of severe thunderstorms is expected today into tonight, with the peak threat centered over Illinois and Indiana. Several intense tornadoes, swaths of damaging gusts over 75 miles per hour, and damaging wind-driven large hail will all be possible. I already read that, but who cares? Midwest, including Illinois, Indiana, Missouri, and Ohio. A very active and potentially dangerous day is expected today into tonight, although some sub-regional forecast details remain a bit uncertain. This is largely attributable to an upscale growing intense mesoscale convective system which has been evolving in the pre-dawn hours across central and eastern Iowa, moving south of the Interstate 80 corridor as of 7:30 in the morning CDT. Measured significant wind gusts in excess of 84 miles per hour have been observed before sunrise, including a measured 94-mile-per-hour wind gust in Marshall County, Iowa. This intense and increasingly well-organized mesoscale convective system will continue to be influenced by an extremely strong southwesterly jet of 70 knots and robust warm advection and moisture transport, and likely continues southeastward from southeast Iowa into north-central and west-central Illinois. This will likely include an increasing potential for surface-based thunderstorms and an appreciable uptick in damaging wind and tornado potential early today, especially on the south-southwest flank of the mesoscale convective system in closer proximity to the northeastward shifting warm front. Ahead of this early activity, a warm front will push north-northeastward across Indiana and Ohio. New severe thunderstorm development, perhaps influenced by a mesoscale convective vortice and transitioning out of the remnant activity and or forming near the warm front, is possible across Indiana into Ohio. Shear profiles will be excessive, with the tornado risk only conditional on minimal instability being present. The result may be an isolated tornadic supercells. The warm frontal position will need to be monitored northward towards the Indiana and Michigan border vicinity, and even if instability is elevated into Michigan, extreme shear and lift may still yield damaging winds and even a tornado risk. To the west, rapid air mass recovery is expected on the west-southwestern flank of the early day mesoscale convective system from Missouri into central and possibly parts of northern Illinois, even where appreciable early day mesoscale convective system impacts occur early. This recovery will be fueled by mid-June insolation and moisture content and robust advection, again attributable to atypically robust 50 to 65 knot low to mid tropospheric west-southwesterly flow by mid-June in diurnal standards. In the presence of 65 to 70 degrees surface dew points, this will likely result in a corridor of 2,000 to 3,500 joules per kilogram of mixed layer convective available potential energy. This will likely set the stage for the development of a broken line of intense supercells, potentially favoring prior outflow or outflow augmented warm fronts, and post-mesoscale convective system recovery zone of differential heating across Illinois and perhaps eventually into western Indiana. Given the clearly supercellular shear profiles and ample venting aloft, linear storm mode is unlikely for most of the event. Long-tracked supercells producing tornadoes and damaging Uh, Large hail are likely. Some strong to potentially intense tornadoes are plausible, given the magnitude of the low to mid tropospheric flow, and again potentially heightened in the vicinity of the prior outflow and warm front. Some damaging wind threats will likely also increase by evening as thunderstorms continue across Indiana into Ohio and potentially southward towards the Ohio River. Upper Texas coast and middle Gulf Coast. The National Hurricane Center forecast shows potential Tropical Cyclone 1 moving into southwest Louisiana by this evening. Wind fields associated with this system will strengthen out of the south ahead of it, resulting in areas of strong low-level shear from the upper Texas coast across southern portions of Louisiana and eventually into southern Mississippi. Mid to upper 70-degree dew points will contribute to modest Cape values, supporting embedded stronger cells with tornadic potential. So this paragraph right here, specifically this couple of this specific part of this paragraph right here. Given the clearly supercellular shear profiles and ample venting aloft, linear storm mode is unlikely for most of the event. Long-track supercells producing tornadoes and damaging large hail are likely. Strong to potentially intense tornadoes are plausible, given the magnitude of the low to mid-tropospheric flow and again potentially heightened in the vicinity of the prior outflow and warm front. That sentence is extremely significant and is something I don't think I've ever seen before. Because usually there's always a linear component. There's always some sort of, upscale growth. It grows into a line segment and then ta-da. I have never seen the Storm Prediction Center be so confident that the mode is not linear. It's all supercellular and isolated. That is the scariest thing I've probably ever read. Linear storm mode is unlikely for most of the event. I am scared. I really am very scared, very nervous for Illinois, Indiana, and all those good places because many metros are in there. Indianapolis is in there, Lincoln, Peoria, Springfield, Missouri, or Springfield, Illinois, excuse me. Many metros are in there, or at least many big cities. But yeah, so that highlighted sentence, it's really probably one of the scariest sentences I've ever dealt with in my like 2 years of tracking the Storm Prediction Center and all of their updates. Uh, so we're actually not going to go into the day two outlook, nor are we going to go into the day three outlook or the day four outlook, day 4 through 8, because I'm significantly dedicated on just the day one outlook, especially because of that wording where the Storm Prediction Center thinks that this is just not linear. So we're going to pull up the Chicago area forecast discussion first. We're going to do that first, and then we're going to pull up the the Lincoln area forecast discussion first, or next. So, key messages. An outbreak of severe thunderstorms with the potential to produce damaging tornadoes, destructive straight-line winds, and large hail is possible this afternoon into the early evening. A flood watch has been issued for today. Locally heavy rainfall is expected to result in an enhanced threat of localized flash flooding. And then these two systems, tranquil, or these two messages that are not as important, tranquil weather is expected to close out of the work week in the wake of the system, and another strong storm system is expected to bring the return of showers and thunderstorms later this weekend with some potential for heavy rainfall and severe weather somewhere in the general region. So, uh, I really don't care what I read because it's all very important beyond this evening. Okay, I'm gonna stop there. So, through this evening, this is issued at 2:12 a.m. Central, 1:12 a.m. Eastern, or 3:12 a.m. Eastern, excuse me, sorry. Uh, Through this evening, complex setup today with difficult to predict mesoscale details regarding early day convection and its impacts on surrounding environments likely to play a key role in the magnitude and location of, excuse me, severe potential this afternoon and evening. Significant regional severe weather outbreaks are often a result of mesoscale accidents happening within an otherwise favorable synoptic scale environment for severe weather. Synoptically, today fits that bill well with an unseasonably strong 120 knot plus 250 millibar upper level jet nosing east-southeast into the mid-Mississippi Valley this afternoon. A rather sharp and vigorous 500 millibar trough will reach the upper Mississippi Valley later this afternoon, with a remarkably strong, for mid-June, 80 knot plus H5 jet streak rounding the base of this trough. At the surface, a near-record deep, for June, double-barreled low-pressure system is prognosticated by 0Z to have one low over southern Lake Michigan, east of the Illinois-Wisconsin border, with a trough extending northwest to a secondary low over northwest Wisconsin. From a large-scale perspective, this setup looks exceptionally favorable for a regional severe weather outbreak, including the potential for intense tornadoes. However, the devil may end up being in the mesoscale details, that unfortunately just cannot be accurately predicted this far in advance. A strong low-level jet over the eastern plains is rapidly transporting deep moisture northward into the lower Missouri Valley. This process can be seen well on geostationary operational environmental satellite TPW imagery, and the combination of strong large-scale ascent associated with the upper-level jet and strong isentropic ascent with the aforementioned low-level jet has already led to the development of showers and scattered thunderstorm development from northern Iowa west-northwest across South Dakota and southern Minnesota. Convective allowing models have a pretty strong signal depicting more vigorous, potentially severe convection developing over eastern Iowa just prior to dawn this morning, as this strong forcing encounters a rapidly northeastward expanding axis of elevating instability driven by the strong low-level theta E advection from the low-level jet. The severe threat with this convection looks like it will be confined more to areas south and west of our county warning area, closer to the expected elevated instability axis, but we cannot rule out a severe threat later this morning creeping into our far southwestern county warning areas. There is considerable spread in the guidance in how this convection does evolve, but with low-level jet remaining strong throughout the day as the nose shifts east into Illinois, it is certainly plausible that this convection will increase in coverage and organize into a mesoscale convective system. Depending on the track, longevity, and intensity of the potential mesoscale convective system, the synoptic scale environment will be disrupted heading into the afternoon. Again, there is considerable spread in the guidance with respect to the placement of what will likely become the effective boundary. A composite of the synoptic scale warm front and outflow from this mesoscale convective system. A number of models indicate an extremely rapid northward surge of low-level moisture and result in stability in the wake of this mesoscale convective system, while other guidance indicates that the effective boundary may struggle to even reach the Highway 24 corridor across our far southern county warning area. Normally, it is safe to expect a further south than Prague location of this effective boundary in the wake of an early afternoon mesoscale convective system. However, today's setup features an unseasonably deep surface low for mid-June with a near-peak high sun angle. These factors make it difficult to write off the models that depict this boundary an unstable air mass surging rapidly north in the wake of the mesoscale convective system, possibly making it to near the Wisconsin border late this afternoon. The northward extent of the boundary should be demarcated between a more substantial severe weather threat and tornado threat and a potentially more muted but still existent severe threat to the north. Several of the convective allowing models are depicting convective initiation along a pre-cold front trough in the warm sector. Given the expected shear, should air mass recovery actually be sufficient, this would create an exceptionally favorable environment for discrete and fast-moving tornadic supercells. Given how quickly these cells will tend to propagate off of the initiating boundary, their ability to survive and thrive will hinge on them traversing a sufficiently unstable and weakly capped environment. Where and whether this type of environment will exist will hinge on how the difficult to predict mesoscale details play out this afternoon. Also, the magnitude of instability will play a role in how quickly these thunderstorms do develop along the boundary, as low-level convergence along the prefrontal trough isn't progged to be terribly strong. So if weak convection quickly moves off to the off the boundary to even a weakly capped air mass, it could struggle to mature. Where and whether this type of environment will exist will hinge on how the difficult to predict mesoscale details play out this afternoon. Forecast photographs within the worm sector feature an amazingly strong low-level shear profile with 0 to 1 kilometer storm relative helicity, well over 300 meters squared per second squared, maximized closest to the composite warm front and outflow boundary, where some backing of the low-level flow is likely. Given that LCLs and LFCs will be quite low, there could be rather strong low-level cape despite the progged abysmal low-level lapse rates, less than 6 degrees Celsius per kilometer. Oh, that is very low. That could be our hindrance today. Ultimately, today is going to require close monitoring of the mesoscale environment to determine if and where the greatest tornado threat will exist this afternoon and early evening. The current severe weather outlook day 1 placement of the moderate risk highlights the most likely area within our county warning area to face this potential. However, it also wouldn't be hard to envision a scenario where early convection does result in the more favorable environment developing farther south and east than the current moderate risk. Given these uncertainties, we are not planning any significant change to our messaging for the severe potential at this time. However, as observational trends begin to shed a light on the ultimate evolution of the mesoscale environment, some changes to today's severe weather forecast may be needed. Finally, the influx of richer Gulf moisture combined with the strong synoptic forcing continues to look favorable for locally heavy rainfall totals today. While storm motion will be quick, very fast, rainfall efficiency will be very high, so localized totals in excess of 3 inches, most of it falling in a very short time, are certainly well within the realm of possibility. Flash flood guidance remains low, so in coordination with neighboring offices, we will be issuing a flood watch for today. So that's the Chicago area forecast discussion. Let's go to the Lincoln area forecast discussion. Lincoln, Illinois, to be specific. So, Lincoln, the reason why I'm doing Lincoln as well is because Lincoln is centered right in the middle of all of these hazards. 45% hatch risk of tornadoes, 15% double hatch risk of hail, 30% hatch risk of, or 15% double hatch risk of tornadoes, and 30% hatch risk of hail. So, key messages. A dangerous severe weather outbreak is projected for central Illinois today, capable of strong to intense tornadoes, EF2 to EF3 plus, damaging wind gusts of over 75 miles per hour, and hail over 2 inches in diameter. Blow my nose. Sorry about that. Next message. Heavy rainfall rates will create a risk of localized flash flooding today. There's a flood watch out for the areas along and north of a Fulton County to McLean County line from 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern to 10 p.m. Central, 11 p.m. Eastern. Strong non-convective gradient winds are anticipated this afternoon, with widespread southwest gusts near 50 miles per hour, particularly for areas near and south of Interstate 72. A wind advisory will be in effect from 12 p.m. Central, 1 p.m. Eastern, to 7 p.m. Central, 8 p.m. Eastern. Discussion issued at 3:07 a.m. Central, 4:07 a.m. Eastern, Wednesday, June 17th, 2026. Bottom line up front. Stay weather aware all day long today and know where your safest shelter is when and if a warning is issued for your location today. An outbreak of severe weather is expected later. The Storm Prediction Center has maintained a moderate risk level 4 out of 5 with an enhanced risk level 3 out of 5 over basically the rest of the forecast area. A warm front will push north, lifting better moisture, dew points in the 70s, and precipitable water values around 2 inches into central and southeastern Illinois. A morning round of convection will travel along and north of the warm front associated with a strong low-level jet this morning. If a supercell can latch onto the warm front, tornadoes can be possible. Otherwise, large hail and damaging winds are the concern for the morning round. This round will enter the northern part of the forecast area by 13Z, 8 a.m., 9 a.m. Eastern, and will travel east across the state. There is some uncertainty of how far south that area of storms will make it, but some guidance is now suggesting as far south as Interstate 70. There is some overlap in timing with the afternoon, the big show. The early round will be exiting the east-southeast counties by around 20Z, around 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. Eastern, which is about the time that the line of storms will be developing in western Illinois. Some uncertainty on how far north the warm front will get still exists. The guidance is showing it lifting somewhere between Interstate 74 and Interstate 80. If the warm front doesn't get as far north as Interstate 80, the moderate risk threat could possibly be pushed further south for the cold front passage and associated thunderstorms in the afternoon from 20Z to 5Z, or 3 p.m. to 12 a.m., 4 p.m. Eastern to 1 a.m. Eastern. The environment will be very volatile and capable of strong to intense tornadoes, EF2 to EF3 plus damage, damaging wind gusts of 75 miles per hour or greater and 2-inch or greater hail. Cape values around 2 to 3,000 joules per kilogram, insane amounts of effective bulk shear values, 60 to 70 knots, and storm relative helicity, 0 to 1 kilometers of around 250 to 450 meters squared per second squared. Holy Jesus, mid-level lapse rates are more than sufficient for large to very large hail, 7.6 to 8.1 degrees Celsius per kilometer. See, now Lincoln has different lapse rates than Chicago. Chicago had less than 6 degrees Celsius per kilometer lapse rates, but Lincoln has 7.6 to 8.1 degrees Celsius per kilometer. So that's why it's very important to compare different forecast discussions from different areas. Alrighty, supercells are the expected mode through most of the event this afternoon into the evening, but may begin to evolve into a fast-moving linear system as it nears exiting the southeastern counties. These supercells have the perfect environment to be long-lived. These storms are going to be moving very fast, with storm motions nearly due east at 50 to 60 knots. That is very, very quick. Dude, imagine having a 60 knot, that's like 65, 70 mile per hour tornado. Imagine having a tornado moving at you at like 60, 70 miles per hour, and you're like 2 miles away from it. That's, yeah. Now, Lincoln said something different from the Storm Prediction Center, technically, but um, Lincoln said that uh, towards its southeastern counties, a linear system may begin to evolve. So yeah. Uh, Anyways, Weather Prediction Center has kept an excessive rainfall high-end slight risk for central and southeast Illinois today, but our northernmost counties have been clipped by the moderate risk area. Precipitable waters of 1.8 to 2.1 inches are forecast. The storms today would likely have torrential rain within them, but will still be moving very fast, hopefully helping curb the flooding threat for most places. With many rivers and streams already at or near flood stage in saturated soils, flooding could become a concern through the event. There is a flood watch out for the areas along and north of a Fulton County to McLean County line from 12Z to 3Z, 7 a.m. Central to 10 p.m. Central, or 8 a.m. Eastern to 10 or to 11 p.m. Eastern today. Remember to turn around and don't drown. Outside of the severe weather today, there are very strong winds associated with the system. There is a wind advisory in place from Schuyler County to Vermilion County from 18Z to 0Z, or 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central, 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. Southerly winds will gust to 35 to 45 miles per hour during that time. And then, this last paragraph we don't really need to read because it's essentially just saying that we're going to get a break. But yeah, so really, that's that. That's that. That's very that is a very scary day. Very scary wording from both from the Storm Prediction Center, Chicago, and Lincoln. All terrible, very scary wording. So please, if you're under a tornado warning today, maybe a tornado emergency, TDS tornado warning, whatever tornado warning you're under, please get to shelter immediately. It doesn't matter if it's not even confirmed and there's just a tiny bit of rotation, there's still rotation. And it's still unequivocally important that you need to take shelter immediately. It doesn't matter because that little rotation could spin up into a tornado in about 2 seconds. But you won't know that. You won't because supercells are extremely chaotic and erratic. They sometimes don't know what they're doing. Like sometimes they have a tornado and then it disappears. Then it reappears and then it just disappears for like 12 minutes and then another one forms. So they're very erratic. They're not predictable. I mean, they may be predictable, but sometimes they're also not predictable. You can't always predict what they're going to do. You can't predict if they're going to cycle. You can't predict if there's going to be a continuous long track tornado that's drilling through the ground. You can't predict that. You don't just have a crystal ball and you can't just think of all this stuff ahead of time. You can't just prognosticate the future like that. You're just gonna have to wait and see what the supercell is capable of scrounging up. But yeah. So anyways, that's it for today. Uh, you heard all that wording, so go do something about it. And I hope you have a wonderful, fantastic day, and hopefully everyone is able to survive, recover, and tell some stories, even if they're very tragic. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Keep on trucking.